Thank you for choosing Citizen TV. Good evening. This is the Monday Report. I'm sitting in for Trevor Mbija, who is still away, but will be soon next week. And tonight it is the International Anti-Corruption Day, and to commemorate that day, we are speaking to the chairperson of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, Dr. Bishop David Oginde. He'll be here in studio to answer some of the questions that you may have. You can start to share them. If you're on next, you can share at Citizen TV Kenya, Sam Gituku. The hashtag to use is Citizen Monday Report, and we'll be sampling some of them. But you also want to have a conversation about that war. How far are we? Are we really making any progress? Because we understand that also the young people are expressing themselves. We'll be looking at what exactly they are saying on what they think the war on corruption is, and if they had an opportunity or the witness corruption, what would they do? We'll be looking at that. But first, here are the top stories tonight. The long road to Gatundu, intrigue as President Ruto finally reaches out to predecessor Uhuru Kenyatta.
Corruption continues to deepen, scandals multiply, profligate wastage continues.
Its tentacles reach into every aspect of our society, eroding trust in institutions.
Home of corruption, grim statistics for Kenya as International Anti-Corruption Day is marked. Golden bag to illicit gold trade. Zimbabwe-based Kamlesh Patni sanctioned by Britain and the United States. Donkey's beef. Our series on how donkey meat is sold as beef continues. I am Sam Gituku, and our sign language interpreter is Yola Nzale. We begin in Gatundu, the venue of a surprise event today as President William Ruto and his nemesis, retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, met and held talks. In separate statements, President Ruto and former President Kenyatta indicated that they had talks on a wide range of issues that include the prevailing situation around the IEBC and what the Kenyatta statement described as an atmosphere of hostility hanging over the country. And as Stephen Leto now reports, both sides seemed keen to give their own version of events as illustrated by the two separate statements released by President Ruto and former President Kenyatta.
Ishaweri village in Gatundu South is the cradle of independent Kenya's first family, the Kenyattas. Out of Ishaweri emerged a 30 seconds video, perhaps the shortest video in Kenya's presidential coverage history. And this split between the two presidencies. President William Ruto is said to have driven by road to Gatundu and was ushered in Uhuru Kenyatta's residence at exactly 12 noon. His journey to Gatundu caught his handlers off guard as he chose to drive in civilian cars with no sirens. Meeting that is said to have lasted for 3 hours only saw their handlers release a 30 seconds video clip as official footage from the meeting. A statement from State House, Nairobi, stated that the two leaders underscored the importance of cultivating a nationalistic, patriotic and harmonious working relationship among all Kenyans and stakeholders, including the three arms of government, religious leaders, civil society and other partners to ensure collective national stability and progress. The long and short road to Gatundu also saw the two leaders discuss the need to achieve broader and more inclusive political consensus in the governance of the country to accelerate the attainment of inclusive growth and fulfillment of the national development agenda. The meeting also touched on the IEBC, with President Ruto and retired President Kenyatta calling for the prompt resolution of the court matters regarding the constitution of the IEBC selection panel to facilitate the appointment of commissioners. A statement sent by the office of the retired president also noted that further to entrench Kenya's democratic credentials, the two leaders agreed that there is urgent need to reconstitute the IEBC in a similar transparent manner. Further, they noted that the continuous engagements are the solution to an all-inclusive democratic process. The Meeting in Gatundu today is said to have taken place after a series of behind-the-scenes maneuvers that began when the two leaders met in Embu last month during a church event. The Embu meeting was tense with an unhappy crowd that had just witnessed the impeachment of Rigathi Gachagua.
Mimi sina mengi ya kusema. Najua mimi sasa siku hizi mimi sina mastori mengi. Mimi naangalianga tu TV. Na kusikia radio tu.
Minutes after the meeting today, Deputy President Professor Kithure Kindiki said the rapprochement between President William Ruto and former President Uhuru Kenyatta works well for national unity, stability, and enables the country to collectively focus on addressing national development priorities. But will the meeting in Gatundu quell the storm in the mountain that appears to be drifting away? Stephen Leto, Citizen TV.
And still on IEBC, Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka has called on all petitioners who have moved to court to block the constitution of the IEBC selection panel to withdraw their cases and allow the process to continue. The Wiper leader says the country is glaring at a constitutional crisis with the absence of the electoral body and accused the government of insincerity in the process. However, the government side, through Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, says it is the opposition side that is derailing the process.
They have wasted a lot of time. Let them withdraw the case that is state-sponsored through a judge in Kiambu, user-friendly. Let him remain, or let her remain, nameless. But she knows what she has done, because that was a tactic in order to delay the reconstitution of the panel in the first place, and then the IEBC.
We need to complete the exercise of constituting the IEBC. And sometimes you can keep on blaming the government. Sometimes rightly so, but also sometimes wrongly so. Because after a process has been done, and then somebody goes to court, it's their right, yes. But the government, being a law-abiding government, it has to wait for the court process to be dispensed with.
Now to the International Anti-Corruption Day, and the National Police Service tops institutions where incidents of corruption has rampantly been reported. Unemployment, education, governance, health, crime and violence have been identified as key priority areas for intervention during the commemoration of the International Anti-Corruption Day themed around the youth. Seth Olale with key highlights of the event.
The National Police Service is yet again on the spot for condoning corruption through incidences of bribery. Even EACC chairperson David Oginde was not spared in a recent arrest.
I remember one near Yaya Center here, who I tried every means, in fact, including telling him, let's go to the station and let me write my statement and let me do it. He said, no, you have to give me something now.
With the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission commemorating the International Anti-Corruption Day themed around the youth, unemployment, education, governance, health, crime and violence have been identified as key priority areas for intervention.
We witnessed youth-led demonstrations demanding accountability of our leadership and mutual respect of citizens.
It's really an important moment for us to reflect on what needs to be done more, and especially how do we engage the youth.
The new anti-graft body CEO, Abdi Ahmed Mohamud, raising alarm over cases of forgery of education certificates.
Corruption remains one of the greatest challenges of our time. Its tentacles reach into every aspect of our society, eroding trust in institutions, stifling economic progress, and denying ordinary citizens access to opportunities and services.
Despite the rampant corruption, the Commission says it is only recovering 4 billion shillings in property obtained through corruption annually. This as Treasury recently revealed that up to 2 billion shillings is lost daily through corruption, sentiments shared by the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. Seth Olale, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Now, the African Center for Open Governance, AFRICOG, has painted a grim picture of the state of corruption in the country. In its 2024 report, the civil society group accuses the head of state of condoning a culture of corruption through unchecked scandals, misuse of public funds, and excessive external borrowing. According to the report, Kenya acquired 36 new loans in the past year, worth about 900 billion shillings, with minimal accountability on the expenditure. A major concern has also been raised over the declining public trust on anti-corruption mechanisms and institutions like the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. Safina Cheng Oma reports.
From the unpopular push to appoint chief administrative secretaries, the enactment of punitive tax measures, to the contentious Adani-Ketraco power transmission deal, which came amidst emerging controversy on the planned leasing of Kenya's international airport to the Adani Group Holdings Limited, President William Ruto's 2-year in office has come under sharp scrutiny, with the latest report by the African Center for Open Governance, AFRICOG, accusing him of presiding over a system where the patron protects the client supporter.
The view of an overwhelming majority of Kenyans is that this country is headed in the wrong direction and that the president is the one who is most responsible.
Only 11% in September believed that the country was headed in the right direction. Now that's down from 30% at the beginning of the Ruto administration.
The report details major scandals that have cast a black spot on Ruto's regime.
In most of these cases that we have been dealing with, the rice imports, the contaminated sugar imports, the edible oil imports, every initiative that has come from this government, by the time it is being passed, people have already sat down and said, ini yangu, ini yangu.
AFRICOG also raises an alarm over what they describe as weaponization of the criminal justice system in the war against graft, accusing the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution of acting in defense of the presidency and persons close to the executive. The report details high-profile cases which have been maliciously aborted, including the withdrawal of the case against former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, who had been charged in 2021 with 6 counts of economic crimes, only for the DPP to withdraw all charges as soon as he became Ruto's deputy. Another case is that of Wycliffe Oparanya, who was charged with corruption offences committed while he was governor of Kakamega County. The DPP wrote to EACC withdrawing his consent to the charges as soon as Oparanya was nominated to the position of Cabinet Secretary by President William Ruto under the broad-based government arrangement.
The higher up you are in terms of political and social connections, the more likely you will not serve a sentence. The more likely an appeal would be expedited.
The report by AFRICOG also shows how Kenyans are increasingly losing faith in institutions established to fight corruption.
Reports to the EACC are declining year on year. We're now talking about only 5,000 complaints being made to them, when 5 years ago, they used to receive 10,000 complaints a year. Almost a 50% drop. So Kenyans will not report to the EACC and will not report to the police either. Because what's the point?
Ruto's administration is also under fire for achieving little in taming the public debt.
The Ruto administration has continued the Kenyatta regime's debt addiction with the same irresponsibility and disregard for transparency and accountability in the acquisition of debt, which now consumes a major part of our revenues without stimulating investment.
In this past year alone, Kenya has taken out 36 new foreign loans amounting to just under 900 billion shillings. Almost all of that is commercial.
Safin Achieng Oba, Citizen TV.
And stemming from that, we'll be speaking to the chairperson of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption, Dr. Bishop David Ogende. He'll be here in studio to respond to some of those concerns and many more questions to raise this evening. But first, the United Kingdom and the United States have imposed sanctions on businessman and politician Kamlesh Patni for his alleged involvement in an international gold smuggling and money laundering network. Patni is linked to illicit gold smuggling operations in Kenya before relocating to Zimbabwe to allegedly continue his activities. He is infamous for being a central figure in Kenya's multi-billion shilling golden bag scandal. Ben Kirui has more.
A few weeks after U.S. authorities charged Indian billionaire Gautam Adani and 7 others with bribery and fraud, a similar axe has fallen on another prominent businessman, Kamlesh Patni. On International Anti-Corruption Day, the U.S. Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, imposed sanctions on Patni for his alleged role in a global gold smuggling and money laundering network based in Zimbabwe. According to U.S. authorities, Patni allegedly led a sophisticated network that facilitated illicit activities by bribing officials, employing trusted supporters to obscure ownership, and constructing an intricate web of businesses to conceal illegal operations. This fraudulent scheme, the U.S. claims, has deprived Zimbabwe's citizens of their natural resources benefits while enriching corrupt government officials and criminal actors. The designation of the Patni's web of supporters and companies illustrates how illicit activity based in Zimbabwe spread across multiple countries, using a web of trusted supporters and bribing government officials to concoct a complex corruption scheme. But who is Kamlesh Patni? Kamlesh Mansuklal Damji Patni first came to global attention in the 1990s during Kenya's Golden Bag scandal, a 13.5 billion Kenya shilling corruption case involving the manipulation of export incentives and bribery of senior government officials. Although Patni denied any wrongdoing, he fled Kenya amid mounting scrutiny and eventually shifted his operations to Zimbabwe.
If you have the trust.
In Harare, Patni maintained a lavish lifestyle.
This is the President Mugabe.
Forging close ties with the then President Robert Mugabe and replicating schemes similar to those he allegedly orchestrated in Kenya. Operating between Harare and Dubai, he expanded his illicit activities to include gold and diamond exports. Patni, who reportedly converted to Christianity and adopted the name Brother Paul, also became a preacher. Though his alleged illegal dealings continued unabated, the UK has joined the US in targeting Patni's operations in a broader effort to combat money laundering and disrupt Russia's use of illicit gold to evade sanctions and finance its war efforts. The UK imposed asset freezes on 5 individuals, including Patni and his enablers. Ben Kirui, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Interesting developments right there. Now, in our second installment of our investigative feature into the illicit donkey trade in Kenya, we speak to those leading the fight to save the donkeys of Kenya who are now challenging the government to enforce the ban that is already in place for the safety of Kenyans and the survival of the hardy animal. Here is Brenda Wanga with part 2 of our series, Donkey's Beef.
The year 2016 was a turning point for the country's donkey population. The Kenyan and Tanzanian governments legalized the slaughter of donkeys. Consequently, donkey abattoirs were opened up in the 2 countries, 4 here in Kenya, with the agreement that the donkeys would be slaughtered with the meat and hide exported to China, where the hide was in high demand. However, things began unraveling fast.
We started facing other challenges, and one single-most challenge that came around that time was an issue of donkey hide trade. Slaughtering of donkeys, specifically for the skin. That brought a whole new dynamic because slaughterhouses were opened and licensed in Kenya, 2016. And by 2019, actually, we had 4 slaughterhouses operating.
We have less than 1 million donkeys in Kenya. In 2015, we had about 2 million donkeys in Kenya. But with the resurgence and the entry of the donkey bush slaughter, that numbers within just 2 years dwindled from around 2 million to just around 1.1 million.
The unbridled harvesting of donkeys with the low replenishing of the same served to decimate the donkey population, and it soon became apparent that this state of affairs was not tenable. Traditionally, donkeys have been used in rural Kenya for labor-intensive activities like ferrying goods, as well as helping rural womenfolk in water-scarce areas to transport the commodity. The high demand for donkeys led to increased incidents of theft of the animals from homestead and a rise in the cost of the same in the markets. This realization had some state and non-state actors agitating for the ban on this trade, and in 2020, the government revoked the licenses of the donkey abattoirs driving this business underground. This time round, the investors' interest reverted to just the hide, leaving the meat to permeate local markets.
We started really mobilizing ourselves and our communities and the government and saying, hey, we need to look at this. And we did a research together with Caro, and actually the facts were out there for everybody. And it was, a report that was accepted by the government that we need to do something against this trade. And so thank God that in 2020, out of that push and engagement, the minister then banned the slaughterhouses.
In Kenya, the Meat Control Amendment Act 2012 has documented donkey alongside horse as a food animal, meaning it is legal to consume donkey meat. However, the ban on donkey abattoirs in Kenya means that any donkey meat finding itself on dinner tables is not only uninspected but also unhygienic and therefore a threat to the health of the consumers.
The greatest risk exposure because, one, we are exposing these people to the risk of zoonotic diseases, because should you have one case of anthrax, I can tell you that will collapse the health systems here in Nairobi, because the number of people that will have interacted with that meat all the way from, let's say, Kedong to here in Bama is a lot.
While animal rights activists carry on with their fight against the illicit slaughter of donkeys, they say the biggest hindrance to this remains corrupt law enforcement officers who often collaborate with traders and either look the other way or offer protection. Our 2-month-long investigation into the illegal trade brought us face to face with this, as some officers tried to stop us from accessing an abattoir handling donkey hide. They now want the Ministry of Interior to rein in these rogue officers whose actions are a danger to not just the donkey population but also the people who unwittingly consume donkey meat.
The police, we can say, are compromised, because how can donkeys move all the way from Tanzania, Magadi, all the way to Kedong without even being seen? This is something that we see that the police are compromised, and in fact, those police officers that are within these areas should be able to tell us what is actually happening.
Aside from dealing with the corrupt officers, the activists also want the judiciary to impose hefty fines for those caught engaging in the trade.
The challenges within the court is that the fines are very minimal, such that the people who are involved in this as traders are just fined some very little monies, and after this they just go back to this illegal business and the illegal slaughters.
In our expose of the Machakos abattoir, the police and the area OCS indicated that the business was duly licensed and had been reinstated after public participation. We sought to find out from the Machakos County officials the veracity of these claims.
The slaughterhouses are not operational. The county government is actually, when you ask these questions, I was also able to communicate with Dr. Waweru, and I have just confirmed there has not been an activity. So whatever is happening, we'll treat it as rumors, because what we hear on the ground, and which has not come to the attention on my desk, is that the purported Chinese, it's like they want to turn the slaughterhouse into a hides and skin production or storing center. So there is no operation, and at the point that we come across that, we'll be able to brief and we'll be able to do the necessary. There is no permit for the operation of that slaughter.
These non-state actors say they will not relent in the fight to save the beasts of burden from possible decimation. Brenda Wanga, Citizen TV.
A fascinating piece there, the hard work of Brenda Wanga and Evans Asiba. We're taking a short break here on Monday Report. Remember, we have that conversation with this gentleman, the chairperson. Welcome back. Direct Line Assurance shareholders are protesting changes made by the company's court-appointed directors. In a statement, Royal Credit chairperson Dr. S.K. Macharia decried recent changes made by the court-appointed directors, which include sending senior managers on compulsory leave and issuing instructions to the finance director to make what he described as fraudulent payments for services not rendered to the company.
In a statement, Royal Credit Chairman Dr. S.K. Macharia said the three sole shareholders in Direct Line Assurance Company Limited have sought the intervention of the Commissioner of Insurance, Godfrey Kiptum, as well as the Cabinet Secretary and PS Finance to stop the stripping of the assets of the company by the partially constituted Board of Directors, constituting Kenneth Ndura, Maina Mwangi and Titus Karanja, who took office on the 4th of October 2024. The Direct Line Assurance Company Limited shareholders sent documents to the Commissioner of Insurance showing that the court-appointed directors of Direct Line Assurance Company Limited, effective 31st October 2024, have instructed the Finance Director to pay directors' fees and allowances for a period when different directors approved by the shareholders of the company were in office. The directors who were in office at the time were compensated for their services during this period. Additionally, the partially constituted board wants Andrew Mbogori and Company Advocates, W.G. Wambugo and Company Advocates, Gakoi Minor Advocates, Denton's HHM and Cairo and McCourt Advocates paid for legal services they never rendered to the company. The board has also instructed the Finance Director to pay SecPlus Consulting Certified Secretaries Kenya for alleged secretarial services to the company. Royal Credit also condemned the partially constituted board's move to put 4 senior management staff members on compulsory leave for their refusal to make unauthorized payments. Lillian Muli, Citizen TV.
Once a fierce defender of government, he is turning to be an outspoken critic and a ferocious opponent. All in a space of just over a month, we are talking about former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, a man who, well into the sunset of his unceremonious exit, styled himself as the regime's ultimate gatekeeper at large. Citizen TV's Emmanuel To turns the spotlight on the drastic, if not entirely unexpected, political makeover of Rigathi Gachagua.
Tusimame tumraki, tusimame. His public appearances evoke some warmth, if not a mini euphoria.
At this moment, also to recognize our former Deputy President, who is also here. Thank you.
In churches, funeral services, or even roadside stops, Rigathi Gachagua is reveling every moment. Just over a month ago, Gachagua was an entrenched power insider, wielding the sword of political power and swinging it at will, often with unpleasant outcomes for his targets. Ousted from office, Gachagua's road to Damascus moment has been swift and spectacular. The light has shone bright, and Gachagua sees what he considers an unfair taxation regime.
Kama Rigathi Gachagua ndiye alikuwa shida, ndio mlikuwa mnaweka ushuru ikuwe juu, mpunguze sasa vile ametoka. Si iko namna hiyo?
Before leaving Jerusalem, Gachagua was a raging proponent of government plans, including the 2023 finance bill, for which he condescendingly assured its opponents a lost battle.
That if you don't collect taxes, there will be no development. That is the truth. So the choices are there. Ukweli ni kwamba pia mheshimiwa, unajua na mzuri nikwambia, hata kama utapinga hiyo bill itapita. You don't have the numbers.
A wardrobe coincidence notwithstanding, Gachagwa's position on taxes has clearly been evolving.
Mr. President, don't overtax people. You are killing them, you are killing their businesses. Lazima tuchukue ushuru ya kufanya maendeleo. Hii lugha ya kuambia watu wasitoe ni ya kufurahisha watu. Lakini huwezi ambia watu wasitoe at the same time waombee barabara, waombee maji, uombe shule zitengenezwe. Hizi barabara zote mheshimiwa anauliza, hawezi jengwa na mate, hawezi. Hizi barabara ya Maram ni barabara ya rami.
On the ambitious Kenya Kwanza affordable housing program, Gachagwa's position has walked a long journey.
Mambo ya housing watu hawataki. Watu wanataka wajengewe barabara, wawekewe stima na maji, mtu atajengea nyumba yake. Those things I was telling the president the truth. But leaders wako pale around him, psychophants. Wanamdanganya rais. Rais wetu, the truth of the matter ni ya kwamba affordable housing ni ya kumaliza mambo ya slums. Why would anybody in his right thinking have a problem with having affordable housing for Kenyans so that they can live with dignity? We don't understand.
Then there is controversial universal healthcare, which has also seen Gachagua shift positions.
Wakisema hii mvumo ya SHA na SHIF hapana sawasawa, hiyo ndio ukweli. Si ndio? Wakisema hii mradi ya manyumba watu hawafurahi, hii ndio ukweli. Tuwache kuwakemea viongozi wa kanisa, tuwaheshimu na tuwasikize. And research has shown that the cost of curing a disease is 9 times the cost of preventing one. So therefore, Your Excellency, this intervention in another 4 or 5 years will also bring down the cost of the health bill.
As the adage goes, a day in politics is a very long time. Emmanuel To, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Interesting indeed. Time can make you change your mind. To another story this evening, the Safaricom Sambaza Furaha Caravan is in Ukambani and Pwani regions as the tour enters its 5th and final week. Residents of Masii, Kabati and Kitui town were showered with goodies from Safaricom that is seeking to appreciate its customers as the Christmas season approaches. Miriam Nyambura was there.
Residents of Masii in Machakos County broke into song and dance on Monday morning during the flag-off of the Safaricom Sambaza Furaha Caravan in Ukambani region. Customers who thronged the Masii market received bags of goodies ranging from t-shirts, food items, goats and chicken from Safaricom. That is extending its generosity this festive season by giving back to the community and its customers.
Tumefurahi sana Safaricom. Imeingia hapa Masii, imetufurahisha, tumefurahi. Nimepata kuku, nimepata sawati, hata naenda kuweka hii kuku paka siku ya Christmas.
Leo nimefurahia na Safaricom as they turn 24 years. Nimepata kuku, nimepata chakula, t-shirt, kikoi, nafurahia sana. Alafu kitu ingine, Safaricom wametuwezesha siku hizi sibebi pesa cash na nunua kama ni credit.
The Safaricom Sambaza Furaha Caravan also toured Kabati and Kitui town, where residents too were showered with gifts.
Nimesikia mzuri sana vile nimepata mbuzi, nitailea. Kama ni wasuku wangu tawapatia sikukuu.
Safaricom also took time to sensitize its customers on the platform and its services.
Pia tunawafunza mambo ya utapeli. Unajua sana sana wakati wa Krismasi kunaweza kuwa na watu wengi ambao wanatarajia kutapeli wateja wetu. So tutachukua huu muda ili tuwaeleze jinsi ya kujikinga. Lakini la muhimu kabisa ni kuwaambia asante. Wamekuwa nasi kwa muda mrefu, miaka 24, watumetushika mkono, wametupatia nafasi kufanya kazi katika communities zao, na leo tu tunasema asante, na pia tunawaletea zawadi kwa sababu ni msimu wa Krismasi.
Musii FM and Radio Citizen presenters who accompanied the Safaricom team took to the stage to entertain and sensitize the residents.
Tuko katika mtasema awamu ya mwisho ama mkondo wa mwisho wa msafara huu wa Sambaza Furaha na Safaricom, na ikiwa ni ushirikiano mkubwa Raw Media Services na kampuni kubwa ya mawasiliano ya Safaricom. Kwa hivyo ujumbe mzito ni kwa wasikilizaji wetu na wafuasi na wateja wa Safaricom, wawe chonjo, wajue kwamba furaha yote msimu wa Krismasi inakuja, iko barabarani, inakuja kwa kishindo pia.
The Safaricom Sambaza Furaha caravan is set to tour Machakos Town, Kathiani, Kangundo, Joska and Kamulu areas on Tuesday. Miriam Nyambura, Citizen TV.
In business, the Kenya Revenue Authority has collected slightly over 1 trillion shillings as of November 30th this year, marking a 4.3% growth from 963.7 billion shillings in the same period last year. Customs revenue rose by 5.9% to 359.6 billion shillings, exceeding 70 billion shillings monthly over the past 4 months. Domestic taxes increased by 3.5% to 643.8 billion shillings. KRA targets 2.7 trillion shillings by the end of the financial year, maintaining confidence despite economic challenges. The Kenya Bankers Association has defended their delay in reducing lending rates to borrowers, even though the Central Bank of Kenya lowered its base lending rate 3 consecutive times over the last 6 months. While committing to lowering lending rates this month of December, they say that while the CBK cuts would reduce the cost of borrowing by government, this is not immediately applicable to customers whose risk is determined by other market conditions. And as Jimmy Mbogo now reports, the benefits of the recent rate cut by the CBK to 11.25% may take a while to trickle down to individual borrowers.
Borrowers will have nothing to smile about despite the third round of monetary easing that saw the Central Bank of Kenya cut rates to 11.25%. Banking sector analysts say the lowered central bank rate will have minimal effect on existing credit facilities, which will continue to attract higher interest rates, while the risk-based pricing model will determine the interest charged to new facilities.
There are very many moving parts to the risk-based pricing model. Another factor to that is that timing. There's a timing lag, which means that banks took, let's say, maybe they took 6-month deposits at the time when the rate was high. So they have to wait for that deposit to mature. They can't break the contract. So by the time the higher priced deposits are outweighing the lower cost deposit, it's going to take a while.
What we're experiencing is a short-term impatience in the market. We should give it at least about 6 months, and we would be having a significantly lower rates by most banks. That lag period, like I said, most banks will justify it by their funded costs and the costs of funds so far.
Central Bank Governor has urged banks to pass on the benefit to customers.
When Central Bank raised the policy rate, the banks were very quick to raise their lending rates. All we are asking is for the banks to be fair and to act in the same way that they were quick to raise lending rates.
Analysts, however, say CBK needs to do more to ensure this happens.
If the CBK wants to spur banks into lending out to the private sector, as I've mentioned, it's cutting the rates. Another aspect might be to just have a look at and review the models that the banks are using to find out what inputs are they actually using to gauge what they're lending out to clients.
Now, for a lot of Kenyans who have been able to access credit from a financial institution, the process will involve sitting at a position like this as you fill your documents. And with rates coming down, for most of us, you would be hoping that this would translate to the rates that you get from your bank. However, according to experts, despite the central bank rate being lowered, it will take a couple of months before Kenyan borrowers will experience these low interest rates on their loans. Jimmy Mbogo, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
The Africa Bitcoin Conference officially kicked off today in Nairobi, bringing together experts and enthusiasts in the blockchain and finance sectors. Key among issues highlighted was the role of Bitcoin in transforming Africa's financial landscape by focusing on its potential for inclusion and economic equity. Experts discussed Bitcoin's advantages such as transparency, fixed supply and resistance to corruption, as well as the role of local startups in promoting adoption and solving African-specific challenges.
Bitcoin is internationally convertible currencies. It's fixed supplied, so it can't be inflated or intentionally devalued. It's corruption-free, and it has no racial bias and no gender bias. You send and receive a Bitcoin transaction, and as long as you have the private key, you can use Bitcoin.
So we have the likes of Bitcoin Babies, we have Gridless, woo! Freebit, Bitcoin Dada, and many others that are really making the difference to ensure that they're pushing for Bitcoin adoption and innovating solutions that are solving for the uniqueness and challenges that you find in Kenya.
The government is urging the diaspora community to channel more remittances towards investments to accelerate economic growth here in the country. Currently, only 25% of remittances are directed towards investments, a proportion the government aims to double by the year 2030. Speaking at the Kenya Diaspora Homecoming Convention, Principal Secretary for Diaspora Affairs, Roslyn Njogu, says the government has unveiled initiatives to see the over $4 billion remitted annually go towards investments. These include a $500 million diaspora bond aimed at financing infrastructure projects, including airport terminals and railway expansions. Diaspora remittances currently account for 3.5% of the nation's GDP.
One of our members in Norway did a thesis and found the money coming into Kenya in remittances is only 5%. So 95% is still remaining outside. Our goal is what can we do together with private sector and business and government to unlock even another 10%.
The figure of remittances that was received by Africa from its diaspora is larger than official development assistance, which quite simply means that the diaspora is a decolonizing force. The diaspora is able, using small ticket items, to actually outgive what we consider important development aid that comes into the continent. So that's one thing to think about. But we must not think of diaspora as remitters. We must not think of diaspora as people who are, as an ATM machine.
In sports, Uganda and Tanzania parliamentarians dominated the athletics events on the second day of the East Africa Parliamentary Games in Mombasa. Tanzania's Anna Aropia won the women's 1500-meter final, followed by 3 Ugandans. Uganda then won gold and silver in the men 1500 meters, as well as the women and the men 100 meters. Kenya's only gold on the track came from the men 4x100 relay. Kenya picked up bronze medal in the 4x100 meter women relay. Vincent Musyoka won silver in the men's 100 meters, while Catherine Omanyo also won silver for Kenya in the women 100 meters.
Kaanza Waganda wakatuarasi kidogo mwanzo, pia nikasema game bado bichi, wangoje tu. Na sasa hivi umeona tumechukua dhahabu. Remember about 10 years ago, we were here in the same baraki. Wakati baraki ilikuwa mchanga tulikompete hapa. Na Kenya ilichukua dhahabu katika hiyo miaka wakati tulikuwa na hizi games hapa.
Umeona hata baada ya kushindana hapa tumekubatiana. Tumesema kwamba lazima kuwe na mshindi na aliyeshindwa. Na hiyo ndio moyo na spirit ya wananchi ambayo tunataka iingie kule mashinani.
Congratulations to MPs Kawaya and Catherine Omanyo. The Safaricom Chapa Dimba All-Stars team will not travel to Spain this week, as earlier announced, due to challenges in securing all travel documents in time. The team was to leave on Sunday for Spain for a training camp as well as friendly matches. The All-Star team was unveiled last week as they planned on leaving the country this week. In a statement posted on social media, Safaricom PLC says they are working to make the trip possible 2024, most probably early next year. The Season 4 Chapadimba All-Stars will go to Spain to complete the Season 4 journey before the launch of Season 5 that will be played in 2025. The All-Star team has 16 girls and 16 boys in the two teams. Junaid Manji survived a late charge from Krish Shah and Sevi Soni to win the inaugural NCBA Central Rift Junior Open at the Nakuru Golf Club. Only 3 shots separated the top 4 golfers as the competition came to a close on Sunday. Manji had a fair score of 78 on day 1 and followed it up with a score of 74 in the second round and a disappointing 82 points in the third round. This was contributed by a poor start in the first 9 in the final round. Manji picked a bogey in the first 7 holes before playing level par in hole 8 and a morale-boosting birdie at hole 9. In the second 9, Manji picked only 2 bogeys and played level par in the other 7 holes. Krish Shah finished second, just 1 stroke behind Manji. In third place was Sevi Soni, 1 shot behind Shah and 2 strokes behind the winner. 14-year-old Belinda Wanjiru was the overall winner in the girls category with a score of 237, 3 shy of the overall winner.
For me, I'd say probably hole number 7 because it's a bit trickier for me because I play more of a fade. So that means my ball travels from left to right. So on that hole, you'd rather be on the left. But on the last 3 days, I've been on the right, which made it a bit harder for me to score on that hole.
It feels good, actually. I'm a bit shocked I won after, especially the way I started this morning. But honestly, I just thank God. That's it.
Now, the Kenya Academy of Sports holiday camps have included tennis in the Mombasa camps as a way of improving the sport and discovering new talents at the coast. The camp has less than 10 players on the girls' side, as some of the invited players had already started their holidays when they were invited. Coach Eli Madegwa, who is training the girls, says the program should have started earlier to develop tennis in Mombasa. The players were selected during the regional and county games in 2024. The coach is impressed by the talents available and wants a follow-up program to ensure that the talents don't go to waste. The biggest challenge is the lack of facilities and equipment in schools, forcing some girls out of the sport until the school holidays when they can access the facilities.
Nice, move back. Let's go two.
I'm very happy because I had like 2 girls who have never played tennis before. And within the 1 week I've worked with them, the girls are able to play the ball over the net, which is very important. They've known how to serve, they know how to volley, they know how to smash, things they didn't do in school and things they've never learned before.
Newly elected Football Kenya Federation President Hussein Mohamed officially took over office on Monday at Kadanda House in Nairobi. The president was accompanied by his deputy, MacDonald Mariga, and some of the newly elected FKF National Executive Committee members. They met with the FKF Secretariat and were taken on a familiarization tour of the FKF headquarters. The exercise was led by FKF CEO Patrick O'Reilly. Mohamed says no new appointments have been made yet. The appointments will be communicated through the official channels of FKF. All right, so it's now 6 minutes past the hour, which is 10:06. We'll take a short break. When we come back, now it's the time to have a conversation with Dr. Bishop David Ogi.